As the morning sun slowly warmed the stone streets of Washington, D.C., men in gray suits headed to their morning meetings, and reporters headed for their coffees and breaking news. While everything in the city was rushing, a quiet building just off Capitol Hill was barely noticeable. Its stone walls had yellowed over time, its large windows were curtained. But inside, another world lurked. It was the city's old public library. Even its name was plain: Jefferson Street Public Library. And that morning, a black Cadillac Escalade pulled up in front of that library. The driver opened the door. The man climbed out of the back seat, his red tie slightly off to the side, his hair slightly mussed by the wind, but his eyes uncharacteristically calm. This time, Donald Trump had come to neither an inauguration, nor an interview, nor a rally. This visit had not been announced to the press. There was no speech. Security was minimal. He was accompanied by only one advisor. He also stayed outside the building. When Trump stepped through the library door, the air inside was completely different from the outside. The smell of old wood was combined with the silence that had settled between the pages over the years. The floor creaked slightly. The ceilings were high. The staff realized who it was after a few seconds. But no one ran, no one screamed. It was more about the gravity of the atmosphere than surprise, because everyone here spoke in whispers. And Trump, perhaps for the first time in his life, adjusted to this whisper. A staff member approached. "Mr. Trump, welcome. How can I help you?" Trump glanced around. There was a book here, the one I read years ago. It was on the back shelf near the window. I don't know if it's still there. The staff member nodded. "What book?" Trump ran his fingers through his pockets. Then he whispered, "Men in the Dust of Time." The staff member narrowed his eyes. "I think I remember. In the history section, shelf 4, row 3. Not many people ask about that book." Trump started walking. His steps were slow but determined. As his eyes moved between the shelves, it was as if the memories had started to walk slowly. Each book spine, each corner of the shelf brought a piece of it to life in his mind. He remembered the first day he came when he was 24. He had just started a construction job. No one knew him. But he was trying to build his future back then. And in this library, he wrote his first dream. "One day the whole world will know me." But what he wrote that day was not in a notebook, but on a small notepaper attached to the last page of a book. No one had read it, because the books in the library were silent. But could the note still be there? Dear viewers, sometimes a book does not only carry information. Sometimes it contains a person's past, goals, and silent prayers. If you feel these lines, write in the comments which book could carry your story. And don't forget to subscribe, because this channel doesn't just tell stories, it also opens doors to your past. Trump paused between the shelves. He raised his hands. His fingers found the spine of the book. Men in the Dust of Time. The cover was still the same. Yellow-brown, worn, but standing proudly. He took the book off the shelf. He began to turn the pages one by one. Page 1, page 14, page 39. And then, a faded piece of paper glued to the inside of the back cover, written in cursive. "One day I will have a say in this country, but when that day comes, I must remain silent long enough to remember why I want it." Tears welled up in Trump's eyes. He had forgotten the sentence he had written years ago when he was a young man, but now, this reminder was what he needed most. The bookseller approached quietly. "Mr. Trump, are you all right?" Trump spoke without turning his head. "Sometimes you don't realize what you've forgotten until you meet your own voice again." He closed the book. Then he took a small envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket, a new notepaper, and wrote a short sentence. If you're reading these lines, you're just at the beginning of your journey. Find a silence of your own and decide there. Will you live with your voice or your shadow? He attached the note to the last page of the book, next to the old one. But this time he didn't write his name. He signed it only in letters. D.T. The clerk looked at it silently. Trump slowly put the book back on the shelf. It was as if he were returning his own youth, his own innocence, his own beginnings. He was just heading for the door when a young girl inside asked, "Mr. Trump, is this really your favorite book?" Trump stopped. He answered without turning, "Number. But this is the book I've been most silent about." The girl may not have understood what she meant, but everyone in the library bowed their heads silently at that moment, because that day someone from among the books had spoken. When Trump left the library, the atmosphere had changed. The calmness of the morning had given way to a gray sky, and the wind had begun to blow a little harder, but he didn't notice. As his driver opened the car door, his advisor glanced at Trump's face. "How did it go in there?" he asked. Trump just nodded. It was quiet, but for the first time I heard what my inner voice was saying. The subject was closed. He got in the car. The door closed. And although the library seemed to be leaving that morning behind, time was still moving inside. It was a little past 10 a.m. The people who regularly visited the library in the mornings were mostly retirees, students doing research, and a few curious people who dropped by from time to time. But something was different that day. Everyone who heard Trump coming was talking in whispers. The librarian Emma didn't want the incident to be a big deal, so she didn't give much information. She had just said, "Yes, he did. He just looked for a book," and he quietly left. But what Trump was doing, which book he opened, where he sat, these soon became subjects of curiosity. A young man, a college student, was sitting inside at that moment. His name was Noah. He had black-framed glasses, a worn backpack, and jeans with the knees sticking out. He was doing his master's degree in history. His thesis was the impact of personal memories of political figures on collective memory after 1980. To put it simply, he was researching how the personal memories of politicians resonate in the public memory. Was it a coincidence? Maybe. But his being there that day felt more than just luck. Noah couldn't contain his curiosity when he heard that Trump had left. If someone like him comes, he leaves a mark, he thought. The clerk asked Emma, "What book did he take?" Emma paused at first, then she bowed her head slightly. "History, row 3, the book on the 4th shelf, Men in the Dust of Time." Noah thanked her. He picked up his backpack. He headed to the shelves. When he found that book, he took a deep breath before opening it. He didn't know what he would find inside, but he couldn't stop his heart from beating a little faster. He carefully opened the book. He turned the pages, and when he got to the last page, there it was, 2 different pieces of paper. The first was yellowed, the ink faded. The second was newer. The handwriting was strong but plain, and underneath it were just 2 letters, DT. Noah read the note silently. If you're reading these lines, you're just at the beginning. Find a silence of your own and decide there. Will you live with your voice or your shadow? The sentence hit him like a slap, because that's exactly what he'd been struggling with lately, finding his voice, but also getting out of the shadow. He lifted his head. He looked around. It felt like someone was watching him. But the shelves were silent. The walls weren't telling. Just the book. Just this line. It had left something inside Noah. At that moment, he said something inside him. Maybe a thesis isn't just academic. Sometimes it's a personal quest. Dear viewers, have you ever felt like your life changed direction because of a sentence a stranger said to you in the past? If so, write in the comments. Because this story builds not only the past, but also the future. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time, because the next line may start your story. Noah put the book on the library table. He didn't take a photo of the note. He didn't share it. But the words were hard to get out of his head. The next day, he went to his advisor. "Professor, I want to change my thesis. Notes to oneself, a variation on political memory." His advisor was surprised. What happened? What triggered it? Noah replied, "I found a note. It was written years ago, but it was as if he had written it for me today." Meanwhile, Trump woke up to a quiet morning in his Palm Beach home. For the first time since his visit to the library, he wanted to be alone. He headed to a bookcase in his room. A book on the 3rd shelf caught his attention. It had no title, but it was made up of blank pages. He picked it up on a momentary impulse and wrote a sentence on the first page: "Those who speak are forgotten, but those who leave a note in silence remain." Then he closed the notebook and thought to himself, maybe one day someone else will find their own voice in my silence. Noah had been living with the sentences that had been going on in his head for days. Find a silence that was your own and decide there. This was not just a literary quote, it had become his personal manifesto. The note he found in the library had done more than trigger a thought. What he had experienced that day was not a coincidence, and now he had to pursue it. Even without knowing why Trump had come there, why he had chosen that book, why he had left such a note, Noah had come to an internal realization. The way a person comes to terms with their own past sometimes leads to another. His advisor at the university had accepted his new thesis proposal. But Noah knew that this was not just an academic direction. This was also a turning point in his own life. He started taking daily notes. I kept quiet today, but my silence was meaningful. I was left alone, but in that solitude I remembered who I was. A book cover sometimes carries an entire human story. And one morning, he walked back through the doors of the Jefferson Street Public Library with an old book in his hand. The same table, the same shelf, the same book. Men in the Dust of Time. He opened the book. The 2 notes on the last page were still there. He touched the papers with his fingertips. He scanned them with his eyes closed. DT. Then he pulled a 3rd note from his backpack, a small card in his own handwriting. As you walk between the lines of this page, know that you are not alone. A man has been silent before you. You can speak now, but you don't have to shout. Just give yourself a voice. Noah, 2025. He placed the note under the other 2. He closed the page, but it was as if a light had come on inside. It was as if the book was no longer a book, but a living thing. The people behind the words had touched each other invisibly. Dear viewers, this is not the story of a leader, a student, or a library. This is the story of people connected through time, words, and hearts. If you too have changed with a small note, write in the comments, because those notes will one day become someone else's compass. And subscribe. Because this channel does not only produce content, sometimes it helps you hear your own inner voice. Trump was at home in Palm Beach at that time, a quiet morning. He picked up his cell phone. He did not open social media. He did not share anything. He just took out the notebook from his inner pocket. As he has been doing a lot lately, he turned the first page, and for the first time, he wrote the following there. My voice was not just noise. Sometimes the most lasting echo is born where you do not speak. Then he picked up the phone again. He sent a message to his secretary. I want to set aside a special fund for the Jefferson Street Library. Let it be anonymous, but not just to renew the books, but also to build quiet study rooms for young writers. The secretary asked back, why there in particular? Trump replied with just one word. They rewrote me. And so that old library was heard again after many years, but not with noise. With words that grew bigger as they were silenced, from between the pages, from the edges of the notes. One day a child opened that book in the library. He came across 3 different notes, 3 people who did not know each other, years apart. But they had passed through the same silence. That child showed the book to his mother. Mom, what do these lines mean? The woman replied, sometimes words are the moment when someone does not speak directly to you, but speaks to you exactly. This book was one of those moments. Years passed. Trump was now spending more time in silence, out of active politics. But he never went back to the library because he knew. What he left there that day wasn't a note. That day he had given in to the quietest scream of his past, and someone had heard him.